And I got to know, as a result, Joanne as well as the other women much better than I had before. And they showed a movie, and I think it might be on the website. But I'll just read you a little bit of this to give you a little bit of a sense of Joanne's background and that led her to play the role that she did here at the school. So Joanne's paternal grandfather, Morris Spitzer, moved here to Salt Lake City from Massachusetts in 1919. He bought a small house and a chicken farm around what is now 20th East and 64th South. He actually then, 20 years later in 1939, after his wife died, he came to live with Joanne's family, which obviously is an opportunity to get to know him a lot better. And Joanne remembers that he was a socialist and that he had a great influence on her way of thinking. Meanwhile, on her maternal side, Esther and Jack Feindling owned the Boston store, a women's apparel store on Main Street in downtown Salt Lake City. He was a respected philanthropist and avid community-minded Jew. He became the leader of District 4 B'nai B'rith, president of one of the two local congregations, Congregation Montefiore at the time, the founder of the first community center in the Jewish community, the Covenant House on South Temple. But during the stock market crash, Grandpa Jack in 1929 lost his fortune and ended up committing suicide because he was unable to honor his outstanding pledges. But his legacy as a philanthropist was one of the things that influenced Joanne to get involved in charitable work in the Jewish community later in life. That's Joanne's grandparents, give you a little bit of sense about them. Her father, Ed Spitzer, was a bright, multifaceted man, a great storyteller, a passionate nature lover, taught Joanne to dance and grow roses. They planted a victory garden during World War II. He instilled in her a love of literature, the power of knowledge, his sense of humor. Joanne's mother was wise and compassionate. On her meager budget, she made and crocheted Joanne's clothes. They lived in a tiny apartment with a sofa and 2 chairs. Her mother was a champion chef. She served as president of the Sisterhood of the Temple, B'nai Israel, and she organized a lot of cooking projects. And Joanne remembers sitting on a stool, peering into vast pots of chicken a la king, hoping I wouldn't fall in. Her mother was an active member of the Jewish Relief Society, which is the organization that became Jewish Family Service years later, which is still a very thriving local social service agency. They did a lot of social service work. Joanne followed her mother's example. She later served on the board of the Jewish Relief Society. During World War II, her mother volunteered at the Jewish USO, helping to feed and entertain what amounted to hundreds of Jewish soldiers who were stationed in Salt Lake, including inviting them to dinner and following their progress. So that's Joanne's parents. Joanne herself was born in 1932, attended Wasatch Elementary School. When she was 13, she enrolled in what was then the Rowland Hall School for Girls. She was a young artist, so she was given the privilege of painting 2 large murals for the school's entrance. And then she received a scholarship to study art at Mills College. But in 1951, she left school to marry Dick McGillis, 12 years her senior, and immediately following her honeymoon, she plunged into community service and organizational work. She became the president of Hadassah, a Jewish women's group, and there are a couple of fun anecdotes from this period, including one where she was chairing the Women's Division campaign of the United Jewish Appeal, and she had to rescue an afternoon fundraising event from an ineffective solicitation speaker. She seized on the theme of what was the hot Academy Award-winning theme song at the time, Born Free, and made a pitch for Israel, and the experience taught her to always have a plan B. And another rule that she also lives by is that if you see a problem, you should find a solution. And she put that to work later as major gifts chair for the United Jewish Federation campaign. I could go on and on about that, but I want to jump to the education portion, which is most relevant to where we're standing here today. Joanne and Dick have had a long history of supporting education. Joanne was appointed to the University of Utah's Health Science College Executive Board, and together Joanne and Dick established endowed scholarships at Westminster College at the University of Utah. They expanded their support to include the College of Nursing, where Joanne is currently a board member. When the Jewish Community Elementary School became independent in 2002, history, of course, that you can read all about right on that wall at your leisure, Dick and Joanne purchased the historic Douglas School that we're standing in here. And it was renamed in their honor as the McGillis School. And today, now that we've added 55,000 square feet of Platinum LEED certified new construction, we are a crown jewel here at McGillis of local architecture and education. Over 360 students learn to live by the guiding principles that Joanne helped to instill in the school: giving to others, repairing the world, good deeds, respect, learning, and community. Wow. Please join me in welcoming Joanne McGillis.
Those are such nice words about me. I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say. Actually, right at the start, I want to clear up a little misnomer. When I get a little guilty when I keep hearing the word founded the McGillis School, because it makes me a little uncomfortable. I think people get the word funded and founded mixed up. There are some names, I think they're on the back over here behind this wall, of the original 11 or 12 families who had the brilliant but really gutsy idea, I think, to take their children out of public school where they thought they were being underserved and take them into the basement of the old community center on 17th South and give them what was really the equivalent of some homeschooling. And I have to think that those people took a huge risk, without question. So eventually, one of the women of this group got me very interested. She came to me and she showed me a film of these children interacting together, learning together, singing together, celebrating Shabbat together. And she said, you know, we need funding to become an integral part of the Jewish Community Center as a program, as a school program. And eventually, they promised they would build a school, a legitimate school. And I said, that sounds wonderful. And I convinced Dick that we should do this, one of my probably better choices. That makes them really better. And, which we did. But, long story, which I'm not going to go into, of course, as it progressed, I could see it going in a very bad direction. The children were, again, being underserved. The enrollment grew, but the children were being treated as a program, not a real school. And the center was not really cooperating. So without going into all the details, I said, I and some others, of course, said, we cannot allow this to continue. We are going to have to separate. We are going to have to become an integral school, and we will become the McGillis School. So, having said that, some people worked very, very, very hard. I won't go into the names, but you can't imagine the diligence, the work, the incredible work that it took to make Douglas School become the entity, the beautiful, wonderful, historic building that it is, including the restoration and everything that went into the bricks and mortar of the building, and also the staff and the people who started it from the floor up. It was the most wonderful thing, and I remember Denise Goldsmith, our first president, standing outside when it was just an empty lot over here during the first dedication, and turning to me and saying, "Oh, Joanne, how will we ever fill these rooms?" And I said, "Don't worry, honey, God will provide." Not thinking, of course, that that meant Dick. Sure enough, Dick did provide enough to keep the building in operation for the first couple of years. But enrollment grew, and of course it grew to the extent that at some point, all of a sudden we were talking about adding on. As we started talking about adding on, that became, of course, a big undertaking, and we wanted to use, again, the same construction agency, a very dear friend of our families, and the same architect. But some rumors started to evolve in the community, made me very, very unhappy. And those rumors were that McGillis School was a Jewish day school. And those rumors were, and I have to be very blunt and honest with you, being circulated mostly around Park City by a former rabbi, Josh Aronson. And interestingly enough, he was on our first associate committee here at the school. I don't know what his motives were, but it was a very detrimental thing to our school. And it was very confusing to a lot of people. So I made it a point to come to one of these first meetings, which, what was the name of the first religious?
JCAM, Jewish Culture at McGillis.
Jewish cultural meeting. And first I looked into the curriculum, over which I have never been involved, I tell you, with any of the curriculum, any of what is going on internally in the school. That is not my problem. That is not my job. My job is simply financial and to love these children and to worry about these children. This school is in very capable hands, let me assure you. But I did worry about this because I thought this is affecting the growth of the school. This is affecting our reputation in the city. This is affecting us in a major way. And if we are going to build a larger building, this is something that I have to look into. So I came over and saw the calendar, and I realized that for the first couple of months in the fall, we were relatively closed for I mean, we have very few school days. And I thought, this is not right. This is not good. First of all, we're not a Jewish day school. That's number one. Number two, you cannot interrupt children's thinking and their problem solving and their concentration if they're in, out, in, out, in, out. It's just not going to work. So I came to a next meeting and I said, I have a problem. And I really am not in a position to go any further with the building situation. If in fact you think you're going to remain so dogmatic about your Jewishness, if I can put it that bluntly, that you are going to confuse all your non-Jewish customers, for lack of a better word, because these people don't need to put up with this situation. They come here for an education. Now, if you think that your children need to celebrate every single minor holiday, you might want to reconsider a Jewish day school. This is not what we are about. I don't think religion and education necessarily gel. I think that we established this school, not I, but everybody who was in the mix, on our 6 ethical, moral standards. They are universal, they are global, they are everything that is required for a healthy, productive childhood and adulthood. That is what we are trying to give these children. I said, what we need to do is celebrate the major Jewish holidays. That's essential. That is who we are. And we need to instill in these kids and in their families the fact that we represent these very basic ethical and moral standards and live by them and represent them. Furthermore, we need to send out a letter or a brochure to every family and educate them about who we are, because our new families that are joining us in this larger edition, they don't have a clue. They don't know. They don't know about us. So we need to do that right off the bat. And you know, they did. They did. And I think that for that reason, we have grown, we have flourished, people are happy here, our children are happy here. Dogma isn't the way you present yourself if you want people to learn, to grow, to understand. I don't think. I think, you know, it's better to catch flies with honey. You just don't need to sock it to people. Kids are happy here. They live by these principles. When I spoke to people at the dedication of the new building, I said, here at McGillis, we never look down on anyone else unless we're bending over to pick them up. That's what we teach kids. If in fact there is a heaven, then all our kids need are these basic principles, and math and science and art and music and the self-respect they have for themselves, which the people here at McGillis are ready and willing to give to them, and that will prepare them for it. So, any questions?
So did the Jewish day school rumor go away? I mean, what are you hearing in the
Yes,
community now?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It is interesting though. I have a hard time explaining McGillis to people who ask me. We winter in California, and people say to me, they're confused there as well. Because I am Jewish, and it says McGillis, and of course McGillis, oh, okay. But, okay, so they say, oh, you built a day school. No. So then, but, you know, it's so difficult to describe this school because this school is so unique. There is nothing like it in the country. How do you describe a school based on a 6-point star of Jewish values, which actually are universal values? Yeah. But we headlight them. We sing the praises of these to the world, all right, and the children eat them up. How do you explain this as part of the curriculum, community involvement, respect? How do you explain that in terms, along with a wonderful, complete education? Complete education. These children go out of here feeling so empowered, so empowered. We had a 7th grade child years ago apply for a patent for an invention. We have children who think they can change the world, and they can. They can. We enable them to feel so good about themselves and so strong. And I have seen children develop in such a way, little shy, mousy children who blossom here. Blossom. I saw your child become a rock star. And he was so shy, so shy. And this happens over and over here because we give them that kind of love and protection. And, you know, this year, I think so much of life is about choices. And that, to me, is essentially my idea about religion. I think my idea of religion is making good choices. Choices for morality and all the things that we advocate. This year, I gave the children books at graduation, which is customary. And I selected a book that I read about in the LA Times that has had a resurgence in popularity because it is such a amazing book called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's written by Viktor Frankl, published a long time ago, but been republished hundreds of times in many different languages. And it tells the story of a man who made a bad choice and ended up in a concentration camp because, of course, of his Judaism, and how he survived by making good choices, and how he fashioned his survival by continuing to make good choices while others were not, and how he continued that theory throughout his life, and how he explains life is simply a continuation of good choices. And I think that's what we try to give our children here. I think that's basically it. And I said to the children, I'm giving you this book. it's not something you maybe want to take to the beach. But this book is maybe, you'll refer to it as a guideline because you're going to leave this loving, safe haven where you've been protected and you've been coddled and you've been taught and you've been loved and, you know, but you're going out now. You've got another 4 years before college, and you're going to go out in probably a less loving, friendly, safe place. And you're going to have to start making some difficult choices. Starting maybe with your peers, starting with how you approach your different subjects, how you approach life. And I said, think very carefully because some of those choices will follow you for the rest of your life. I have 2 sons, and when they went away to college, one of them made very bad choices. And we are all living in the aftermath of that. So, choices, that's big, 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 big.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, do you have any perspective? Occasionally there's debate in the school, you know, should there be a McGillis School high school so that there would be that protected haven, you know, beyond 8th grade? Do you have any perspective on that question?
I can't afford it.
God will provide.
I have two opposing theories. I went to Rowland Hall when it was a little girls' school, and courtesy of my grandmother who had a little money and my uncle Sammy. And it was a wonderful college preparatory. I mean, they pushed us so hard. I can remember getting up at 4 in the morning to study so I could get a scholarship to go to college. It was college preparatory. That was it. Push, 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 push. And when I got to college, I thought I was cock of the walk. I really did. I had an A+ average. I just, you know, I was so stupid when I got there compared to, you know, other people who were, they were smart, really smart. And I had to take Latin, Spanish, you had to take language. I had 4 years of Latin, which sailed me through the SATs in English, you know, because, but there were other very smart people there. And top-notch students and writers. And first of all, we were never given typing because, you know, girls' school. So in those days, which was 65 years ago, so I had to pay somebody to type my, you know, term paper. So that was interesting. So anyway, at that, you know, and after this school was built, I thought, you know what, maybe it's good for these kids to go out there into this cold, hard world for this little period of time and kind of see what they're up against. Because they're not really prepared for this other side of society. They're not really prepared. They're in a close-knit group. Even socially, they're in a close-knit group, and so on and so forth. Now, by the same token, it would be wonderful if they could complete their education in this same super duper educational kind of facility. I mean, I have to be very open-minded about it. If a benefactor came along and said, let's build, it is a completely different kind of school. There's a social problem, not problem, but there has to be a bigger social atmosphere, you know, for older children. more athletics. It's a different environment. So if a benefactor came along and was willing to provide all of that, you know, so be it. I think it'd be wonderful. But it's, you know, that's as honest as I can be about it.
All right.
Yes.
So, I'm actually someone from the East Coast who went to a Jewish day school, moved to Utah, horrified that there would be no diversity, no Jews. It was very frightening. and so when I learned about the McGillis School, I was, relieved knowing that I would have children one day. And so it's very interesting to hear this history. And I also wonder if any of the, if when you were thinking about the school and the other founders were thinking about the school as it became less of a Jewish program,
Yes.
not a Jewish day school, if you were also thinking about for the Jewish children, how meaningful it would be for them to be in an environment where they were not the total minority, right? I mean, they are a minority, and yet
Right.
surrounded by individuals who may not know anything about Judaism. So I think, one, the opportunity to expand people, especially in Utah, about what Judaism's basic, fundamental, core beliefs and practices are. Again, and I agree that they're universal, and yet I also know that within Judaism there's a whole other level of, they are universal, and yet these are very core
Right.
to Judaism. So just thinking about, was there a vision about wanting to have this larger impact on increasing the understanding of Judaism amongst, in an area where it was not known?
Well,
Or
you
not,
know,
or if that just happened by
our
default.
children and their families are our best advertisement. We've had children come to their families and say, I want to be Jewish. It's so fun. And we have Shabbat and we sing and so on and so forth. And it seems to satisfy. What we are doing now seems to satisfy most everybody. We lost, I will tell you, one family after the sort of revision where we weren't celebrating every single minor holiday. We lost one family that I'm aware of, and they were ultra-conservative and came from Chicago expecting more from us. And to my knowledge, that is it. And I think most everybody is happy with the level of religiosity, for lack of a better word. I just don't think that schools are, the place for the emphasis. Even when I went to Roland Hall, which was an Episcopalian school at that time, most definitely, they had because I learned about every single religion. It has taught me tolerance and given me a background that I think is fabulous. I will tell you this, the upper school person who got the highest grade point average was given the privilege of carrying the cross into the chapel every morning in a hassock, and I had that privilege one semester, and all I did was pray to God and that my grandmother who sent me there, who was ultra-Orthodox, and that God and my grandmother would not strike me dead every morning. But, I learned to sing in Latin and French, and those were some of the happiest days of my life. It taught me tolerance, and it was just a beautiful, wonderful time of my life, and they gave me a good education without a lot of dogma. I will tell you that.
Well, maybe I can, unless there are other questions, maybe I could just ask the final question.
Okay.
The name McGillis in
Yes.
Dick's family, is there a history with that? Was it originally, one rumor I've heard is it was originally Margolis and got changed?
We
to
have
Allison?
absolutely no idea. You know, I used to, I mean, it's so weird. I used to go out speaking for United Jewish Appeal. So I would stand up and say, hello, my name is Joanne McGillis, and I would say, people would go, you know, why is she talking to us? She's obviously not Jewish, and she's raising money for United Jewish Appeal. So after going there and standing and waiting for the room to calm down, finally I said, hello, my name is Joanne McGillis, and I know what you're thinking. Yes, I am Jewish, and my husband's Jewish, and my mother and father were Jewish, and his mother and father were Jewish, and how it came over, you know. The story is, that Dick's great-grandfather came off of the ship after this long, arduous journey, and he was so tired and so sick and so weary. He got off the ship, he got on his knees, he kissed the ground, and he said, "Oi, what a Megillah." Megillah in Yiddish is a long, big story. And I said, thank God he didn't say Ganze Megillah, because that means that's a big deal. So, so from that point on, you know, I had their attention at least. But we have not a clue. His father, I didn't know his grandfather, of course, but Dick's father looked like a big Irishman. And he was indeed a pugilist. But he had the name McGillis. His brothers had the name McGillis. They came from Colorado. And Dick's father was, he was the circulation manager of the Newsies, the newsboys at the Tribune. They brought him from Colorado because he was a pugilist, and he was a fighter, and he took care of these kids, and he would send them out on the streets and give them their locations. And he had the first news cart that had neon lighting in America, and it ended up in the Smithsonian Institute in the media section, in the booth, whatever, the media section of the Smithsonian. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the story with the name.
Okay. This section of our meeting, I want to read one final quote from this book here, from Ann Bernstein, who's a former, or I guess still a current board member and former chair of the board of the school.
She's on the board now.
And she said about Joanne, there are many people who have ideas, there are few who have big ideas and the drive to make them happen. Joanne, I've been deeply moved by your vision, your determination, your strength, your generosity, your commitment to community, and your hope for the future. Thank you for showing me the joy of dreaming and the power of doing. So I think we all feel the same.
Thank you.
Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Louise to talk about Thanksgiving.